Okay, so it's been a while since I've done a video about Doctor Who, and this video is not really about the content of Doctor Who itself. It's actually a response to another video that I've just watched on YouTube. I follow another Doctor Who fan on YouTube going by the name of Bowlestrek, and he posts reviews and responses to each of the new episodes of Doctor Who, and his reviews have been less than positive, which most of what he says I agree with. There are a few things that I disagree with, but for the most part, he and I are generally on the same page when it comes to our reviews on this current season of Doctor Who. Today, he posted a video about an article that was posted by a lady going by the name of Lucy Jones, and this woman starts her article off by saying that she had tuned in from time to time in the past to an episode of Doctor Who here and there, and had never really found it that appealing. But she seemed to decide to give Doctor Who another chance when it was announced that we had the first female Doctor, which arguably that was one of the reasons why they did that, was that it was obvious that they were trying to appeal to this Lucy Jones person. This is exactly what I mentioned in my other video. It's these far left-wing feminists. This was their target audience for this change. Lucy admits to not being a fan of Doctor Who prior to Whittaker being cast as the Doctor, and which it's obvious from the remarks in her article, because she refers to Series 11 as the 11th season of the series, which is not true. It's the 11th series. It's the 11th series of the revival, but it's not the 11th season of Doctor Who. What I want to address in this video, though, is something that I mentioned in the last video that I did. It was one I mentioned that this pro-Whittaker camp and people who tend to defend all of this PC crap that's in this new season of Doctor Who, they dishonestly represent the last 55 years of science fiction. Okay, in my last video I mentioned that part of their narrative is that this is the first time that science fiction has a strong female character in the lead. And I discussed that in my last video. I showed dozens of examples. That's just not true. Science fiction has always had the flexibility to allow for a more progressive agenda, because most of the time it's set in the future. It's supposed to be set in a time after present day, so that when we're supposed to be past all this ridiculous sexist BS stuff. Lucy Jones is a premier example of this person that I was referring to in my last video. Okay, in this article that Bowlestrek was covering, she mentions that one of the things that piqued her interest in this season of Doctor Who was the fact that this season of Doctor Who would be interweaving the LGBT community and people of color, those types of characters, into the narrative, and would be attempting to normalize. She outright states that out of everything that she's watched and read in the past, she's never seen that before. Even if we accept that you have no previous experience with science fiction whatsoever, okay, there's no way you can make that remark truthfully. Not unless you just started watching TV and movies yesterday and reading books yesterday, and you haven't had time to expose yourself to anything yet. That remark just baffles me. I can't tell if they're just being deliberately dishonest in order to bolster this narrative, or if they're being honest, they're genuinely honest, and they just haven't ever experienced that before. But I tend to lean towards the former, because even if you admit that you have not seen any of the original series of Doctor Who, we only need to go to last season to see that Doctor Who was representing not only people of color, but the LGBT community, because Bill Potts she was a major character, and she was gay, and she was a person of color. I have a laundry list of characters from science fiction, going all the way back to the 60s, that fit this category. I mean, you had Uhura in the original Star Trek, you had Geordi LaForge in TNG, you had Dax. She arguably represented the transgender community long before it was even mainstream to do so in Deep Space Nine back in the 90s. You had Tuvok in Star Trek Voyager, Travis Mayweather in Star Trek Enterprise, Commander Sisko in Deep Space Nine, Dana and Blake 7. These particular characters, it was treated more as a normality than what the current season of Doctor Who is doing. But that's not what this season of Doctor Who is doing. The season of Doctor Who is elevating women and people of color and the LGBT community above everyone else, and then it's calling it equal. But when I see articles like this, where what are evidently are paid pundits, I can only conclude that they are being paid to push a narrative. What I would call damage control. It's trying to exaggerate the difference between television that came before this season of Doctor Who and this season of Doctor Who. It's trying to paint them as like black and white, no pun intended, different, and that's just not true. It's just dishonest to say that out of everything you've ever watched and read, you've never seen an example of people of color or the LGBT community being interwoven into the story and being normalized. That's just not true, okay? Because either you have very poor taste in your fiction and what you watch and read, or you have an extremely narrow library on what you choose to watch and read, or you're just lying. You're lying to bolster a particular narrative, and I tend to go with the third, okay? Because this Lucy Jones lady, she claims to be a journalist, okay? And you cannot be a journalist where you're constantly exposed to the front line of the media and not be aware of this kind of stuff. So anyway, that's what I wanted to respond to in this video. I just wanted to respond to that article. I'll leave a link in the description below to the video that I'm responding to by Bowlestrek. You cannot say truthfully that out of everything you've ever watched and read, you've never seen a person of color treated as normal within the context of that fiction. That's just not true. Okay, because it is everywhere today, even outside of science fiction today. Yeah, it's comments like that that just drive me up the wall. Okay, because it's an obvious attempt to fuel a narrative. They're trying to demonize the last 55 years of Doctor Who or science fiction, television in general, I guess. Not just Doctor Who, but television in general. They're trying to demonize the last 55 years, and somehow Series 11 of Doctor Who has broken new ground and is doing all this wonderful progressive stuff that no other television series has ever done before. What? You're like 50 years late to the punch, okay? Because science fiction in particular has been doing this since the 60s. Sorry, do your homework.